I have always liked my name. My grandmother said it defined my spirit. When I was born, Ma said the eagle soared overhead and the sun shone brighter than anyone's imagination. Imagine that, she said. Not that I believed her, or what that could mean. I had no reason to believe her. I never tried that hard to fight to survive, until I arrived in the brutal concrete of a cold March London. Until I became conscious. The heat and humidity and squawking of the rainforest, a distant memory. And until I began suffocating beneath a pyre of prejudice, choking on silence, stricken with a mental paralysis, dying to read, write, or think something extraordinary. I became a shadow. No drug could remove hell to triumph. In a time where the illusion of superiority controlled the narrative, turning a creative mind to stone. I did not want to perceive of an era where intimidation and its consequence were an expected part of life if one chose to be somebody, if one felt that one was more than their colour. I could sit on any bus, whenever and wherever I chose, even though in reality I could not and cannot move easily through spaces not designed for me to inhabit, until a bottle was thrown from a passing car and the words too hard to repeat flew through the air and hit my English sensibilities. Then I knew I was other. I had denied myself. I lived in a white world quietly. I thought I fit, but the older I get, I sense that I am squeezing myself into ever-decreasing spaces, silently. I woke up, and bird blew. We are caged birds trapped by disease, now and then. Ma lived through badness and bigotry, as she called it. What pulled her through was the unmistakable power of her spirit to endure. I think she would have smiled her sweet smile if she had lived to see Barack take up office. Her tears had dried up, she said, after the shootings. She would not have wept when Barack took the oath, though I am certain I saw her eyes sparkle to see her granddaughter rise from the dirt road, as she called it, with a fine English education. That made her laugh. Imagine that, she said, and clapped her hands. I saw Ma before she passed. We sat on her porch as we used to do, instead of watching her favourite movies or listening to her recount our oral history like we used to do. She asked me if I was still writing in such a serious tone it shook me. I shrugged. It was neither a yes nor a no. Ma had always encouraged me to write. I did not call it writing. I did not inhabit the same universe in terms of writing as Maya or Tony or Audrey or indeed James. I wrote words down on a piece of paper because I feared I would forget the heat, the smell, the life, and the mind of the woman I loved, resolute in her love for me, in the poetic truth of what made me, me. I feared I would dissolve into a dark, soulless world, empty of meaning, if I did not put some of this down on paper, if I did not record our history. There is no greater pain, as Maya said, if someone has a story to tell. was never any good, and even though Ma said I was, I still did not believe her. Her love for me was so strong that I thought she would say anything to make me feel good about myself. I took out a few pages I had scribbled on, which were screwed up because I had pushed them far down into my bag, into a space I used for unacceptable things. Much of the content had come from memory, but events according to what I had personally remembered, an essence of conversations my grandmother had with her friends after church every Sunday. I read. Ma's eyes remained closed throughout. From time to time she nodded. I finished reading my scrawl. Ma opened her eyes slowly. My grandmother shook her head. She smiled as only Ma could, with such love in her eyes, and said softly, "Write it again, Lana. Write it again. Write the whole thing. Leave nothing of the sorry mess out. Otherwise, what have you learned? Nothing at all. Not a thing." I wrote it again. It used to be so, my grandmother said. It was how she started every story, playing dead to catch Corbeau alive, suffering at the hands of the devil. Silk stockings, chocolate, Carmen, and Porgy and Bess were not the only things they brought with them when they came. They brought disease too. They brought the imitation of life, hatred. They taught us to hate ourselves, our culture, our language, our music, and each other. And they turned paradise into a swamp. The land was soaked up with hatred. There were sightings, hauntings. It stirred and muddled everyone's minds. These were the secrets you hushed up in the dead center of your chest. We knew how to keep a secret. It was stuffed up so far it stretched around our front like a girdle. Disease spread its reprisal in a cloud of dust. It was like a purge. This whole blasted island was impregnated by grief. Everyone abandoned their better nature for an appetite of rum, the white powder, and the wetness of sex, nastiness and tumbling permanently into the mangrove swamp. All buried, erased. Sheer foolishness blinded us all. The priests had to take in the children from the squalor, give them a future, and remind them about God. It was a terrible place for a human being. The living thought it was all that they deserved. The dead scorned us because they resented how they once lived, and walked from the latter ridge, forgetting that they were dead, in broad daylight. Then that poor, sweet child disappeared. One minute he was alive and frightened, but he knew he would soon be dead, because of what he saw, and because of who saw him. Some of his clothes were found by the old slave sweat hut, so they say. The poor child would never know a future. Miss Esme was the child's mother, Miss Melda's younger sister. Miss Esme whirled and screamed when she heard. What finally emerged when all the people in Providence searched in vain for the child was the poor woman lost all purpose, and her only great stimulus in life became tatting needlework. Miss Esme said nothing after her boy disappeared, nothing at all. She closed her mind and emptied her heart. She could not listen to the whispers about her fatherless child. She and the dead child's brother, Roman, became a painful curiosity for the folks. It was easier to make lace collars. The art took her beyond terror, beyond pity, into forgetfulness. Miss Esme became oblivious to Roman, so Roman's sole drive was to run down the dirt road. Miss Esme would sit with the other women, wide dark eyes protruding from her head. She had lost the layers of fat from her face, which had become chewed up with sorrow beneath a straw bonnet, tied with a blue tatting lace ribbon, holding fast the folds of sagging skin under her chin. passed the shuttle back and forth, with the nimblest fingers knotting fine silk thread. The precision of her enterprise satisfied in the short term her abnegation. At least no one would complain that she was idle. Then she would not have to answer the occasional questions about what had happened. Then Miss Esme began to forget she had had a child, let alone twins, or that one of them had disappeared and the other ran himself from ruin to glory. Her stubbornness was unshakable. She would tat in her wrath into every lace collar until the last hope of the dead boy being returned by the devil was abated by oblivion. Until then, Miss Esme would sit in the morass and execute the perfect knot. The more she knotted, the stiffer the fragments of grief distorted her spine from neck to hem behind her starched gingham dress. Then she would unravel and start again. It seemed that Miss Esme preferred to wear lace collars, not self-adorned suffering. She rejected pity and warm-heartedness. It made the memories of childbirth unbearable. If the lace collars were ever finished, her life as she knew it would come to an end. Miss Melder had confided to Miss Mavis, who spoke of it to not a soul, that the twins had been conceived in the confessional between 3 Our Fathers and 5 Hail Marys. Imagine that. Of course, Miss Esme's withdrawn attitude was understandable. Miss Marjorie, a Dobler woman, Miss Esme's oldest friend, believed. Miss Marjorie did not know the truth as such. She was charitable. Split in two, Miss Marjorie had been a novitiate, but had left the order before taking her final vows. She had said a life without jazz would be unthinkable. Given the same choice, Miss Marjorie said that God would have easily chosen Lady Day. Everyone laughed. Hush up. It was not even a matter of opinion, Miss Marjorie was certain. Thereafter her concession would be to endure life outside convent walls in a black wool dress. In the sweltering heat, the sores were hardest to bear and heal. But she soldiered on. One must follow one's instincts towards one goal, she scratched. Consequently, Miss Esme, Miss Marjorie preached, had sacrificed herself completely to God's wisdom. The safest place to be now that everyone was looking underneath her skin. To acquiesce to the vicious tongues about the reasons for her actions was to follow the devil on the road to damnation. Miss Marjorie fabricated the greater part of her real emotions. She was accustomed to lying. All in all, Miss Esme had kept her promise to God. Suffocated by religion, the consequences of her actions and beliefs would be the sign of her good faith. She had conceived the twins in God's house. That much everyone knew.